You're listening to Politik Canadiana. Hello and welcome to this edition of Politik Canadiana. I'm your host Greg Lurtz, here with Dalton Holloway and Jordan Wood. The three of us are all Canadian staffers on Parliament Hill and have filled various policy and communication roles in Canadian politics, and we're also the partners behind professional political image consulting. Today we're talking about foreign interference. It has been all over the news for the past few days that there has been interference from the Chinese Communist Party in the 2019 and 2021 Canadian elections. So we are going to take a deep dive into that today with a special guest who has been on a lot of news programs lately and has actually been a victim of these targeted campaigns from the CCP, former MP Kenny Chiu. That's coming up. All right, and we are here with former MP Kenny Chiu. Kenny, really good to see you again.
Good to see you, everybody, and good to be on the program here.
Really happy to have you. So just to start off, I'm wondering if you can kind of walk us through the campaign that you had and the interference that you faced from the Chinese Communist Party in the 2021 election.
Well, Greg, just before I address your question there, let me put in a little bit of context. The Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, has definitely, well, now we even get the political smoking gun per se from CSIS and through Globe and Mail reports and global news reporting on, but. If you pay attention to the national security situations in Canada, our security apparatus has been warning us and warning the Parliament of Canada that Canada it's under the threat from not just CCP but also Iran, Russia as well. The difference that I can see though is today Russia, although being the most experienced country in doing that, spreading disinformation, conducting transnational repression business, et cetera, much like the Iranian community. They are not as resourceful, however, as the Chinese Communist Party, and they are not as connected on the ground as the CCP as well. My experience, yes, we in 2021 we did not see anything from these other communities, from Russian communities, or in terms of Iranian Persian community. But the experience that I have, confirmed now by news reports and through whistleblowers and CSIS, that yes, it's a concerted effort. Now, my experience, it's also not a single dimensional, a point in time, but it started with my observation of the developments in Greater Vancouver area, especially where I live. It's a progression. It's a gradual dialing up of the oven, so to speak. I was an elected official in Richmond, British Columbia, a school board trustee. And pretty much soon after my election in 2011, I started getting invitations through Council General's office, celebration of this, celebration of that, New Year's, and their National Day, et cetera, which by themselves, it's nothing unusual because, that's one of the activities these public office holders would attend.
Yeah.
The difference is that you start getting attentions from the communities. In Vancouver, there are associations of Chinese associations, and you start getting the very much attention. You start garnering attentions from these, association of associations like umbrella group, and knowing how China operates elsewhere in the world, including Taiwan, also Australia, the UK, um, pretty much all the Western world. I start becoming very careful about my interaction with them. Um, but gradually, they become more supportive in terms of donating money to my 2015 campaign. I even get a chance to have coffee with the Consul General Liu Fei of the PRC in a white spot coffee shop, and I think they're trying to size me up. But I also have been a known media personality per se, because I've been speaking, I've been doing commentary, I also been co-hosting radio programs for many, many years in the Greater Vancouver area. And my stand has always been advocating for Canadian values within the Chinese community and Cantonese and Mandarins. So I suppose they would have a file open on me by 2015 when I ran for the first time federally. And they would have seen, for example, my support for there's a Causeway Bay bookshop in Hong Kong. They
Mm-hmm.
publishes books that are banned in China, political books, and many of the CCP officials, when they take a vacation in Hong Kong, the bookstore is definitely one of the places they would stop by and stock up on these CCP secrets and strategies and all that. One of
Mm-hmm.
the bookstore owner was kidnapped into China, and subsequently he managed to con himself back to Hong Kong and fled away from Hong Kong. And he was in Greater Vancouver in Richmond, and I managed to help them secure an interview with a local radio station. So actions like that, I would imagine, probably deserve an entry in that dossier that the Consul General had prepared for me.
Yeah.
So in 2015, after the coffee, they have stopped showing interest. Um, my mainland Chinese supporters have reduced their enthusiasm. Let's just say it. And
Yep.
you can also observe in 2019 the support from certain community has dwindled, and I started getting uh, news and feedback that they were told, the community has been told by the Consul General that I do not deserve supporting. In
Oh
2019, my
wow.
second time running, and my time this time I won. Perhaps it's related to the fact that I defeated um, uh, a nomination candidate, early 2019, that has been labeled, and rumor says she is more uh, leaning and supportive of the CCP, and rumor says she's also a friend of the Consul General. There's no way for me to verify that, but 2019, uh, the news is that Kenny Chiu is not worthy of support. Now,
So
fast
this
forward to
is
2021. This is different. The difference is that I start getting information from soldiers on the ground, my volunteers, people who have connection in the community. I start getting screenshots of people broadcasting and sending completely fabricated articles and misinformation, um, that I'm a traitor, I'm a Chinese hater, that I will put the Chinese community in jeopardy, that I shame myself, and all these crazy messages are being circulated, not just in WeChat. Yes, WeChat for sure, but also on WhatsApp groups. Many of them are they were born in Hong Kong, I assume, Cantonese speaking, and yet they are still being aroused with crazy messages like that. And the thing is, if it is just a preference, somebody saying that I don't like this guy, he's blah blah blah, there will not be any backing. What is cunning and important about those campaign is they have articles being published seemingly with authority. For example, about my private member bill, these article would argue that exactly how the Chinese community would be put in jeopardy, how potentially just being connected with an academic circle in China could put somebody in jail or risk $400,000 fine. That Aaron O'Toole, if he get elected as a prime minister, he's going to ban WeChat. We can talk about what WeChat is later, but information and disinformation like that started circulating in 2021, and I became very concerned because the level of organization, the spreading of the disinformation, and the effectiveness of these have been confirmed by some of my door knocking experience.
Yep.
That in a short year and a half, 2 years, before, people were very supportive, opening their doors, willing to plant a supportive lawn sign at their property. But all of a sudden, a year and a half, 2 years later, they start shutting the door in my face as soon as they hear that I'm Kenny Chiu, and seeking their support. The response was emotional. They were angry, they were frustrated, and as everybody knows, I'm a pandemic MP. Our class of 2019, we have very limited way of reaching out. We have very limited way of discussing much topics other than mostly focus on COVID-19 and pandemic. So for me, it's a big, huge puzzle. What causes the pendulum to swing from one to another? So when you put these together, when you realize that the CCP will always try to plant somebody who they are not only they are agreeable, but they can control and will respond to their command positively. They will plant those, as we have seen in the latest Global News report regarding a Liberal member of Parliament, and also their report on 11 candidates in the Greater Toronto area. Yep. And then they will also pick people who are against them, who are focusing on speaking, for Canadians, against their interference, such as myself. They will use me to serve as a warning to any other prospective politician in Canada that they're trying to put under influence.
Yep.
So if they can capture you, they will try to influence the way that you vote and the ways that you represent and convince your party on certain positions, whether you should go visit Taiwan or not, say, for example. But if you're new, they will start pointing to Kenny Chiu and say, well, you better behave, because otherwise, just look at him. I think that's in general the strategy. It's a long-winded answer to your simple question, Greg, but that's my experience by and large.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because you start this story all the way back in 2011 in that feeling out process, and it seems that what you're saying is there is a significant shift between your 2019 and your 2015 federal runs and your 2021, and that's probably a direct result of the stances that you took when you were an MP and actually active in Canadian Parliament, and they went, nope, that's not what we wanted. They were ambivalent to you before, but suddenly they're like, no, we got to get this guy out of here. Wow.
I think you got it spot on.
Yeah. So walk us through that election then itself. Day one of the election, you go in. It's obviously a tight riding, a swing riding. It goes liberal or conservative. Kind of, if you can walk through this a little bit, and I know we have Jordan here too, who's probably going to be able to answer a good amount given his involvement with you in that election campaign too. I'm wondering if maybe the two of you guys can kind of just take us through this story. What was your election experience like?
Yeah, Kenny, if you don't mind me leading off on this one, let's start at ground zero. The very first time you decided to communicate these concerns of foreign interference with the rest of the team. Right, I remember it was fairly late at night. I was cleaning up the office, getting ready to go back to my room, and I got a phone call from you, and you had just finished talking to some prominent members of the community who alerted you to these concerns. Now, what I remember from our discussion is that I tried to talk you down and calm you down, downplay it, which in retrospect probably wasn't the best decision. But the viewpoint from what's the affectionate term we tossed around, Guaylo, was that this wasn't a big issue to the English language community. If we could do maybe some media on it, like that was fine, but this was more of an internal talk between Chinese language segments in the Richmond area, and we simply did not have the ability to do that communication, and we had to find an alternate route. Like, what after that discussion, what were your thoughts? How did you feel, and where did you go from there?
There's a deep sense of helplessness and exposed, during that period, just prior to the election, but realizing that there's been a concerted effort to unseat me. And yet you can see that political tsunami coming, and there's nothing you can do. If you recall, we also have collected all the information since myself as an MP during my tenure, we were approached by the Canadian Security Intelligence Services, CSIS, and we met up with them before. We decided to collect all these information and intelligence and set up a meeting with CSIS. They are being so cautious that we initially proposed that we should do it over Zoom, and they would not do that. They would only meet with me in person, and they are so cautious that we were going to transmit those evidence and information to them over the internet, albeit encrypted. They would not take any of that. Remember that they asked us to print out each and every screenshots that we have received and collected, using the campaign office printer, and they will only take that in person as a paper form. Oh, wow. So we met up with CSIS, and that was the only personal flotation device that we grabbed hold of. And only now that I know the Party Central, the Campaign Central, was also aware of that. I suppose they also observed that Aaron O'Toole has been smeared, has been mischaracterized and portrayed as anti-Chinese, that he's going to ban WeChat, etc., etc. So I know that now that Walid Solomon, had been our campaign co-chair for the Central Conservative campaign, and he was appointed as the representative on the site, the election monitoring committee during election that Justin Trudeau has set up. And he did bring up these concerns and information, and he tweeted that there has been no notifications or alarm from anybody during that period of time, and his voicing out and his reporting of concerns and attacks such as what they're observing had fallen into deaf ear. So during that time in Steve and Richmondese, we were communicating with a couple other candidates, but there was nothing solid that we could do. but we did what we could potentially doing, um, like other than reporting it to CSIS, we have also scrambled and start notifying media, local media, and you can still find an article that was published by Richmond News prior to the 2021 election in mid, no, actually early September, that we sounded the alarm that there is something fishy going on, something coordinated. And we also have a last minute press conference that we called. It was so well attended that there was only one Chinese media attended, and I don't know if they actually air the news. We also have YouTube videos that we published um, under kind of emergency Hail Mary situations in both English and Cantonese, explaining uh, that many of the information circulated are disinformation and complete falsifies and has a hidden agenda in manipulating votes. But I suppose it was all that were a little bit too little too late. And the rest is history, as they say.
What was the
And
timeline of this phone call? Because you guys talk about this first phone call, which was because Kenny, you've talked a bit about you're getting some feelings. There's some stuff out in the community, but that phone call seems to really be kind of one of these spark points where you're going and having that conversation with Jordan, going, okay, this is a thing we need to be worried about. How far into the election campaign were you?
Well, as you can understand, campaign it's chaotic.
Oh yeah.
There are 2,000 voices from the 1,000 volunteers that you have. And unfortunately, campaign manager is it's the eyes in the storm kind of thing. So, everybody will provide their very valuable advice to the campaign manager, to the candidate, and all that. Um, so understandably, you know, and you know, and I'm kind of the person who will try to clear. Um, maybe it's all the obfuscation that I've seen in Ottawa, especially the Liberals and all that. I do not believe easily in good news. Uh, I tend to trust a little bit more on the conspiracy side. That when people come to me and say, "Hey, thank you, I will support you," I usually take it with a big rock of salt, and just bury my head in door knocking and doing whatever a candidate can do.
Yep.
So I've been the skeptical one in the campaign leadership group, pretty much from the get-go. Um, but at the same time, it's an asymmetric warfare that our opponent is engaging with us, an asymmetric information warfare. So if you are inaccessible to some of these information, you will understandably have concluded with a complete different perspective than otherwise. And Richmond is such an interesting place in Canada. We have over 50% of our city's populations are of Chinese ancestry, but then the so-called Chinese, many of them are multi-generations. They may be second, third, or even fourth generation living here in Richmond. And then of the remainder, some of them are from Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, recently the People's Republic of China. So it's hard to believe that there could be some sort of concerted effort spreading disinformation and be able to sway the Chinese vote per se. So I understand why my friends helping me in the campaign, they would find it difficult to echo my what I see, what I observe, what I believe. But it's without the national, um, with none of these people are violating any laws. Okay, spreading disinformation. Even the people who organize, activated and acting on behalf of an foreign government agent, as a government agent, none of them has broken any law because Canada has no law to safeguard ourselves.
Yep.
So with that background, we know that we're pretty exposed, and that's why I had an overwhelming sense of you know being exposed.
Yep.
The level of helplessness and frustrations are quite high during that period of time.
And just to chime in for a little bit of clarification on a few of the points that Kenny mentioned, um, the diaspora groups are hard to reach, and the sense of confidence that he wasn't feeling that the rest of us were comes from how we are stuck in the English language group. Our internal polling, English language, great results. External polling, English language, great results. Media contacts for how we're combating misinformation, not on an equal language playing field because of, just look at the rest of the campaign team, we're all English speaking. Our main and I'd say successful route at getting the attention that a concerning issue like foreign interference deserves, even right back to the private members bill, FIRA, against foreign interference, all done in English language, all communication done in English language. So we're paying attention to this while things that we can't grasp, only Kenny can grasp, is happening behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And as for CSIS, I just personally think they did a great job. They were very pleasant, friendly, helpful throughout the entire process. Even though some of their ways, like you were saying with all the paperwork, seemed a bit archaic, they had good reason to be, because they want hard evidence. The things we're hearing on the ground of people showing up knocking on doors in a trench coat late at night to threaten someone's relatives, the sitting outside a car from another candidate's campaign office and seeing people with contact with the Chinese consulate going in and out of it. That is nothing we can verify with CSIS, but CSIS can take that paperwork back to their offices and work with it to come up with a plan on their end.
Yeah. Is that... I'd like to get in a little bit. So I know that a lot of times when you talk, there's foreign interference in an election, someone's talking about ballot stuffing or something of that nature. What kind of shape did this targeted campaign against you really take throughout? I mean, not just the 2021 election, but I mean maybe with a specific focus on the 2021 election?
I can only, of course, share my view, and I from what I can observe, there are a couple of ways to achieve that goal. First of all, you will have to suppress your opponent's supporters, and that is not difficult at all during the pandemic. If you recall, even though the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said this is the most important elections in our country's history, year and a half, 2 years after the last one, the voter turnout in Richmond, BC, in the two ridings continue to be lower than the national average. But at the same time, put yourself in their shoes. Your family, solely rely on, this thing called a cell phone, and to conduct business. Particularly, there's an app on this cell phone that you need it for transactions of money purchase, that you rely on it to get your simplified Chinese language news, all curated, to be able to get in touch with your family. It's the only way to get in touch with your family back home, to see how mom is doing, to talk to dad and see how he is doing, to look at the dance that your little nephew does in front of you, or to listen to the singing of a little child.
This is all
Which
WeChat.
family just have. It's called WeChat, yes.
Yeah.
And imagine your pretty much your complete social life, your virtual presence rely on this single app. And now all of a sudden you've been told that Kenny Chiu's party leader, Aaron O'Toole, will ban it if he succeed in forming a government. Just imagine the kind of threat that and the impact it will have on not just yourself personally, but also your entire family. You will start losing all that connections. Now it's not these Canadians' fault for installing WeChat, because WeChat is the only sanctioned social media app and messaging giant by Tencent in China, and so understandably they will feel fear, very worried, and yes, they know that conservatives will give their future a brighter future for not just themselves but also their kids. They will start looking after the economy and all that, but in the end, they're scared, and so they will start voting either stay home and will not express the support for Kenny Chiu anymore. Especially, you start seeing articles saying that he's anti-Chinese, he hates the Chinese mainlanders and all that. Of course, you will stay home. The other way of doing it is to flip supporters who are mobilized enough to stop Kenny Chiu. So they start being mobilized to flip their support. There used to be very nationalistic, which I sometimes I couldn't help but to correct them. There is a saying that the Chinese vote for Chinese, and I object that on principle. But for years, that's what the community believes. And then all of a sudden in 2021, we start seeing that there's an unknown candidate of a different race, and people start flocking to them in droves, and people don't even know how to communicate with him because he doesn't speak Chinese. He doesn't understand the culture. So it's all strange and surreal to somebody like myself observing from the side.
A question. Sorry, did you want to?
Oh, I just wanted to ask as well. What was that mall we used to get noodles and bubble tea at? The Lansdowne?
There are many malls that serve bubble tea and noodles. There's
the one that overlooked your old office.
Aberdeen Center.
Aberdeen, that's it, the Aberdeen Center, thank you. One thing I noticed, and you're bringing up how integrated WeChat is into everyone's life, is banking. WeChat's a way of sending money around. And quite a few of the businesses, but Kenny would have to pay for because they accept two things: cash and WeChat. And
WeChat Pay, yeah.
WeChat Pay. And here I am, someone thinking, oh, I've got a MasterCard, that's fine. Well, even in Canada, in places like where Kenny lives, that's not fine.
Well, I was in the tourism industry in Southern Ontario, and there was conversations while I was there about how do we integrate WeChat Pay into, because there was large Chinese. This was before the pandemic, but there was large Chinese tourism in the area. Absolutely. So they're like, how do we make it easier? And when you say sanction too, Kenny, you mean like this is the Chinese Communist Party has said this is the only app in China that you're allowed to use, and if you're not using it, you're going like black market bootleg stuff, right?
Well, no, they even the CCP, they do believe in choice. Okay. So they have 3 or 4 apps that you can choose.
Okay, yeah.
But it's all under their control. Right. So you can choose WeChat Pay, or you can choose Alipay by Alibaba, the group. Yep. So there are choices, but it's up to you to choose. But WeChat is the most encompassing app that it's great. The functionality, it's huge. The ability that they can do that, it's significant. And in China, in Hangzhou, for example, you do not carry cash anymore. People don't deal with transaction, Jordan, even with cash, let alone MasterCard or Visa card. All they do is just carry their cell phone and tap on the machine, and they're done.
Oh. So Kenny, based on everything that you've shared so far, just your opinion, do you feel that the efforts and the interference that your campaign went through cost you the election?
Well, I'm not as well trained in the dark art of interference, and therefore be able to tell results being changed or not. As our prime minister, I guess he concluded that it doesn't change the result. I don't know what information that he has that I don't. But I think he was just playing with words. I think what he's talking about is the foreign interference definitely has been reported and he knows about it, but it does not change the final result. I think that's what he's trying to suggest. But even that, as I have heard from the former diplomat to China, Charles Burton, commented on Canadian media. He also wondered how could the prime minister provide that conclusion one way or the other. How do you know how many people, when going to cast their secret ballot, has their father, their mother in China in mind and worry about being disconnected from them, and therefore cast their ballot one way or the other? How do they know? I've also received disinformation that the Liberals have circulated in my riding. They said if Aaron O'Toole forms government, the Conservative, it's going to legalize all assault weapons, not assault style guns, but assault rifles. And that to me is like, whoa, where did you learn that? Russia? And so to me, the level of sophistication it's significant. And just like Charles Burton has said, I don't know how anybody can tell how much of an impact it has on Canada. In media interviews, I've been using this analogy, and I perhaps can share that here too. It's akin to myself, going to see a doctor, and the doctor said, Mr. Chiu, you have cancer. It's not spreading right now, but you do have cancer, or you're infected with some nasty bacteria. It's not spreading right now. And so will I go home and start telling my wife, hey, you know what? I'm not dead yet, so no action is required. I just have an infection. I just have cancer. No big deal. Of course not. You will be alarmed. You will be taking actions. You will start seeing specialists and to address the problem immediately, because you know why? You know that these cancerous cells or bacteria will spread if you don't counter it. So similarly, Prime Minister is right, not changing the result today. It may just, take 100, 1,000, 3,000, whatever votes from this poor candidate called Kenny Chiu. But if you don't do anything, if you don't send out a signal, do not blame the Russians, the Iranians, or the Chinese for not only continuing, but up the ante and up the game, because you are telling them that, hey, you know what? Come, it's Canada. We're not protecting ourselves. We're not protecting our diaspora, multicultural communities from being manipulated by you guys. So, come and attack us.
Yep. And that's kind of going to your comment on the Liberals dragging their feet on dealing with foreign interference, right?
Exactly. They talk the talk, but they seldomly walk the walk. I'm sorry to say that, because they know for a long time that the victims of these foreign interference are Canadians who are, from the diaspora communities, living in North Vancouver, the Persian community, the Torontonians who are from Russia, or maybe Chinese community in Greater Toronto or Greater Vancouver areas. And they always say, "Oh, we respect you. We love multiculturalism and blah blah blah." But in the end, they don't do much to safeguard and prevent foreign predatory or aggressive regimes from taking advantage of these communities, from preying on that, from manipulating them. That's why I really have little faith that the current Canadian regime, the Justin Trudeau Liberals, will do anything significant to stamp this.
So this is partially why, when you were a member of Parliament, you introduced your private member's bill C-282, the Foreign Influence Registry Act. I have that right?
Oh, that's great.
That is correct. I have my staff to thank. Jordan played a significant role in helping me put this together. We initially model ourselves after FARA, which is the American version of the disclosure. But I understand too much of the Liberal Party of Canada, their attack. All you have to do is just watch what Jennifer O'Connor used. It's the traditional line of exploiting Canadians with their anti-American sentiment. They will draw, link between you and Americans, and hopefully will stir up hatred to whatever issues. Let me sidetrack here a little bit. I don't care about Donald Trump. I don't care about Joe Biden. I will never vote for any of the two, because you know what? I'm a Canadian. I care more about what happened in this country than outside of this country. When a foreign country start putting their dirty hands in my country, I have to do something. And that's why me and my team had decided that we have to do a foreign registry. We abandoned the initial draft because it gives our political opponent a chance to attack us, using anti-Americanism. So we model ourselves after the 2017 the Australian Foreign Influence Transparency Act, I think it's called. Okay. And that's what we model ourselves after in version 2. And we tabled it, as a private member bill in 2021. If I recall properly, it would be April that we do that.
13th.
And so, yeah, that's what I knew from my observation living in Richmond and as a former school board trustee and public office holder seeking elections. I know the level of influence that the Chinese consulate has been, and that's why a bill such as what we propose, without hurting anybody's rights in conducting their political business, yet inject a level of transparency in the activity. It's a proper balance in protecting Canada. The Canadian society, online media or traditional mainstream media, or investigative journalists such as Sam Cooper could dive into such registry and start sorting things out left, right, and center, who have seen who, when, and how, and for how long, on what subject. So these are what we believe will protect Canada. When I started the office in 2019, I still believe that would be the minimal step that we should take today to secure our national interests.
Yeah.
Now, in response to this interference scandal breaking, Pierre Poilievre has said that he believes a registry where they track paid interference is something that's necessary. Does that give you hope that something like Bill C-282 might once again reappear?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you pay attention to what Pierre Poilievre campaigned on during the leadership race, he repeatedly cite a quote by our forefather John Diefenbaker. The famous Canadian Bill of Rights that says, "I'm a Canadian, a free Canadian," and all that gives me hope that he's willing to share this and pledge this freedom uh, to all living in Canada, diaspora community, Chinese, Russians, Iranians, or other ethnic community members who could potentially be under the threat or the influence by a foreign predatory regime. And and uh, you know my former colleague in the Senate, Senator Leo Hosako, had retabled what we've proposed in the House of Senate a year ago in 2022 in February. And if Justin Trudeau has a shred of honesty and seriousness, he would have taken Senator Hosako's bill seriously and take it to the floor and have it debated, have it amended if necessary, and have it enacted. At least that would serve as a first salvo that in response to foreign interference, these predatory forces interested in having a piece of Canada, it's undermining our very fabric as Canadian, because we believe in multiculturalism. We are multicultural um, society with many ethnicities, and during COVID, unfortunately, I can tell you that there has been anti-Asian racism, and because there are certain people in Canada that would be so cognitively lazy, they would just believe in a simplistic worldview that they would assess somebody just based on their skin color or where they're from. If Justin Trudeau does not do anything to safeguard Canadians of Chinese descent or other diaspora communities, he is going to put these communities under attack by the exceptional few who are lazy, who are filled with hate. Um, my staff can attest to you that we have seen, even as an MP, that we have seen those characters. Some of them has mental illness or whatever. They will be more than happy to use the inaction that Justin Trudeau has done and blame certain communities, and they will allow, in other words, these foreign power to drive a wedge into our country, into our multicultural fabric that has been seen as a success model in the world, and will pit one community against another. And that is not something that we want to see. That is not something that, as a prime minister, should stand aside and not do anything.
Yeah. Yeah,
well
definitely.
said. Very well said.
Need some proactive action out of the current government. We know it's here. We know it's happening. We know there's been briefings. We know CSIS has been on it. We've heard these things in NSICOP reports for, well, I think basically since like the first NSICOP report, they've been saying, hey, there's foreign interference. It's China, Russia, and Iran, and they're doing 3 pages of black ink. But that's what you're seeing in these NSICOP reports. Yeah, it's definitely time for some proactive action.
And it doesn't have to be one action, right, Greg? I mean,
Yeah.
I think Canadians, in general, or the Liberals specifically, they mischaracterize the whole thing. They were looking for a silver bullet. People are thinking, what is the solution? You know what? Be prepared that there may not be just one solution. It could be a set of solutions. It could be, you know, like what I talked about is the freedom of practicing your political rights, and yet at the same time, expose the action under the sun, and that's what the Foreign Influence Transparency Act or our Foreign Interference Registry Act are proposing. But there could be others that the government could enact to stamp disinformation spreading. I'm fully aware of what they're trying to do in the name of that under C-18. But you know what they're trying to do, unfortunately, they lack the credibility of articulating properly. There will be other solutions that they could propose. So there could be one, two, or three. The most important part is to do something substantial, to send a message to these foreign countries. Look at Australia. They have senators who have been brought into justice, and they're almost like selling out their country, selling out to the Chinese. And they got caught, they got ashamed, and they put in the Foreign Influence Transparency Act. Tit for tat. It's like playing ping pong. But in Canada, step one, step two, step three, step four, you've got balloon flying your heads, doing surveillance, and you didn't do anything. When you have in the Arctic Ocean, you're not interested to assert your sovereignty. You're not interested to protect your younger generation from the addiction of TikTok, let alone about their personal private information being leaked. You're not interested to secure your political institution, allowing reportedly 11 candidates from being pick and choose and influence. And the latest from Global News is that the Greater Toronto Area MP, Han Dong, after his predecessor stepped down in disgrace, was a plant, was actually put in to the seat in the nomination, securing pretty much the election as an MP by the Chinese consulate in Toronto. So when you don't respond to any of that, when you don't take an action, you cannot really blame these predatory, aggressive regime of taking a step further. We're, like I said, we're in a asymmetric information warfare, and if you don't do anything, they will just keep on, just like any other predator do, like a scorpion. They have to do what they do.
With regards to your silver bullet comment, if you were in a position of authority or an advisor to the Prime Minister, what would be the first step in this dance it will have to do? Because you mentioned it's no silver bullet, and it's almost like Canada's a house and we're leaving the front door open for these attacks. What would be the first thing you try and do to let these predatory regimes know that we see you and you're on notice and we're going to start this battle?
Yeah. Well, put yourself in the Chinese Communist Party leadership shoes for a while. I know it's stinky, but try that. You see that you're dealing with a Canadian government that you kidnap many of their citizens, and I'm not just talking about Michael Kovac and Michael Stafford. We still have Hussein Chaleo, who has not seen his son for 16 years since he was born. Um, we have, and yet, the Chinese communists, are seeing, hey, the leadership in Canada, they have key players in the party that advocates for a a compromise. Why don't we release they will say, why don't we release Meng Wanzhou in exchange for the two Michaels? Yeah, it's going to hurt our rule of law. It's going to hurt our international commitment to justice and violated extradition treaty rights with our allies. But let's. So you hear noise like that within the Canadian governing elite party, and you also start seeing that even though you've been caught infiltrating their party, planting people who are more supportive of you in their rank and file, they're not doing anything. Even their security apparatus warn that the governing political party, the Liberal Party of Canada, that such interference it's happening. The Liberal Party of Canada did not do anything to safeguard itself. If you observe as a Chinese communist that instead of a pushback, when the Canadian security apparatus become so frustrated, and became putting their career or potentially personal interests at risk, and became a whistleblower, the only action from your Canadian counterpart is that's not acceptable. What he was referring to, it's not your action interfering into Canada, but the whistleblower's action, it's not acceptable. Your counterpart in Canada, the Prime Minister of Canada, talked about get to the bottom of how the leak happened, then expelling your diplomatic corps. By the way, according to Charles Burton, China has disproportional number of credential quote unquote diplomats in Canada, 146 of them, and as opposed to some of our allies, the Japan, the UK, and they just have a couple dozens of staff here. So if you are Chinese communists, if you are observing all that, hey, it's a windfall, because you can see that you have struck gold, and that's why you're so proud of yourself as Chinese communists, and you can't help but claiming credits and even letting your lips loose a little bit and say, hey, you know what? We were right. We picked the Liberals. We wanted them to have a minority governments because they can consume themselves in arguments and debates and all that. And yeah, they are definitely the weakest, the most beneficial to us. If you were the Chinese communists, you cannot be blamed for thinking like that, because the very government that Justin Trudeau Liberals are heading, they are very weak in the response. There is not even one such 146 among them, one diplomat being expelled or being held accountable for what they have done. And he trusts the communists more than he trusts the whistleblowers from CSIS. And that's really sad. That's really unfortunate, because, like I said, these are career bureaucrats. These are people who've been entrusted with investigation and reporting on national security challenges that Canada is faces to protect Canadians and Canada from these predatory, aggressive foreign regimes. And yet their reports, they're sounding the alarm, have been fallen to deaf ears. Yes, Bill Blair will tell you that, oh, we sent out an email warning all that, blah, blah, blah. It's not a committee that I'm looking for. It's not an email that I'm looking for. CSIS have already sounded many alarms, and we don't need them to sound another alarm just to sound an alarm. We need action. There has been no action from Vancouver. When Justin Trudeau first became prime minister, he welcomed Kevin and Julia Garrett back from Canada, back from China, sorry, to Canada. And people have forgotten the story behind this. It's also got a Richmond link. There was this character called Su Bing, who is a software guy, and he hacked into United States military industrial complex, and stole information and provided it to the Chinese communist. And had he not agreed to finally to the extradition treaty and admitting guilt to the Americans authorities, we will be struggling with the Kevin and the Julia Garretts, who, by the way, lived in China for decades, helping North Korean refugees at the Chinese North Korean border as missionary. They've been incarcerated. So Justin Trudeau cannot say that he doesn't know what kind of countries, bullies that he is dealing with this communist Chinese. They arbitrarily arrested Kevin and Julia Garretts. They arbitrarily arrested a former diplomat and also a businessman, in the two Michaels. And of course, they will see it's nothing to do with the Meng Wanzhou case. But interestingly, the two planes, one taking Meng Wanzhou back to China, the other one releasing the two Michaels back to Canada, they crossed paths in the air. Just within hours, the two Michaels were released. And so, I refuse to believe that Justin Trudeau is so naive and that he couldn't see it. So there has to be other reasons. And that's why I support conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who says, that he doesn't do anything because it's benefiting him.
Well, on that note, Kenny, I think before we let you go, I see a couple flags behind you in your Zoom background here. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get a little update because it's been a while since we've seen each other. What have you been up to in the past little while? What have you been doing in your post MP life aside from making sure that doing all these media interviews and making sure that people are aware of Chinese foreign interference and helping spread the word? Right.
I've been neglecting and ignoring. There's a business that I have interest in, and it's a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, providing hyperbaric oxygen treatment to people. So I've been putting a lot of time in that. But in my free time, which now has more, I've been paying a very close attention to what happened a year ago, slightly over a year ago, in Ukraine. There's this sovereign country. All they want to do is just to have freedom and to live freely in their own way from control and manipulation by a big bear called Russia. And for that, they've been infiltrated. Disinformation was spread among them since actually quite for a long time, but since 2014, they've been invaded. To the rest of the world, the Ukraine-Russian war has been going on for a year. But no, this actually happened in 2014. It's just a continuation, a full-scale invasion. So I pay very close attention to what happened there. I have huge respect and admiration to the Ukrainians, especially what they have asserted, in 2013, 2014 at the Maidan Square. That they demanded their government to give them the freedom that they deserve and the rights for. And so seeing homes being completely destroyed, in Kiev, in Kharkiv, in Kherson, I noticed that I've become more and more frustrated because, thousands of kilometers away, in this peaceful nation called Canada, watching things, reading news on YouTube and also on the web, on the browsers, I've become more, overcome by a sense of helplessness. So I decided to do something about it. And therefore, I volunteer myself in a humanitarian mission in Warsaw, Poland.
Oh yeah.
And joined them for 7 weeks in looking after Ukrainian refugees stranded in Poland. Many of them are just women's mothers with their young kids. They have not seen their fathers or brothers for, at that time it was like 10, 11 months, but now longer. Many of them misses home, and they need psychological and also just sometimes just mere social help. So I went there, and for 7 weeks, I went to refugee camps. I went to the temporary housing the Polish people have so generously prepared for the Ukrainian refugees. We have children's game with them, crafts with them, also in material distribution center. Unfortunately, I don't speak any Slavic languages or Russians, so I could not be the front face and serve the Ukrainian refugee lining up for materials. But I work at the back of a warehouse, distributing these materials by a church, and they put me in exercising my muscle, lifting and opening boxes of materials, shelving it, and including junking carton boxes, tons of them every day. So these are things that I've done in the short 7 weeks. But what I observed is the pride that people inherently own about their destiny. No matter how you bomb them, no matter how you cut off electricity, water, gas, telecommunication, or even their life, Ukrainians keep on telling others that they are Ukrainians, they are not Russians. And this country also shares a special spot in my heart, Poland. You can see that they are very strong. They take a very unambiguous stand in helping their neighbors, their brothers, the Ukrainians, and they take a lot of risks in doing that. And yet, people remain hopeful. They remain steadfast in helping their Ukrainian neighbors. Think about that. Just in the capital city of Warsaw, there had been an estimate of 400,000 Ukrainian refugees. 400,000. Imagine if there are 400,000 refugees in Ottawa that seek for help and security, and yet especially at the beginning of the war, the Polish people opened their home. In social media, they post notice like, I've got 2 beds that I can help, 3 or 1 room with a family. And these are not just government action. We're talking about on citizens level. They've expressed that, and one can argue that what the Polish government have done to date is just following the lead of the Polish people, what they want to do, and they've been a leader, arguably even stronger a leader than some of the traditional Western European democratic countries such as Spain or Italy or even France and Germany. So I have huge respect for the Polish people and their government. I have significant, great respect and sympathy for the Ukrainians. I made friend with one of the Ukrainian refugee, a male, in the fighting age, but he was serving on a ship during the war, so he was not allowed to go home. I guess he preferred also the safety, so he got stranded in Warsaw. His name is Ganek, and I remember vividly that he showed me a video that his brother in Kherson sent him. And in the video, they were just talking about their family updates and all that. But in the background, you keep hearing boom and bomb and explosion. Like to the Kherson people, it's not alarmable. It's just just every other Friday, regular things happening. But to people that are outside of it, you realize that these people are under constant threat. Um, Russia no longer bomb the Ukrainian military facility. They no longer bomb the Ukrainian infrastructure. They have moved on to targeting Ukrainian civilians, as we have seen in Dnipro. A whole apartment block was split into two, and 46 people were killed instantly by a Russian cruise missile. So I was privileged to serve strong people alongside with people that I admire for that 7 weeks. I would encourage everybody who's watching this to keep on paying attention to what happened, to keep on praying about the for the country. There are tens of thousands of people killed, and keep on pressuring the Canadian government in doing more. But at the same time, what happened in eastern Ukraine, it's also being copied by these predatory, aggressive regime from Russia. They're copying it from Russia, but these other regimes are more resourceful, they're more capable, and they are potentially undermining our very country in Canada here. They are still spreading disinformation through official CRTC sanctioned channels in our cable. For example, you can subscribe to CGTN, an English disinformation spreading machine. And CRTC managed to stop RT, Russia Today, the Russian mouthpiece. And one asked the question, why do you not do the same thing with the like of RT, the CGTN? Are you waiting for a war to happen, for example, in Taiwan, to take some actions to stop this disinformation? So that's my thoughts, serving the Ukrainians in Polish territories, about, drawing a parallel of what happened in Ukraine to what's happening among us in Canada. And, we as Canadians must be stronger and demand more from our government, protect ourselves, to protect our society that we treasure and pride for so long.
Yeah, definitely been keeping active, keeping busy, and still keeping caring about the Canadian people. It's always good to see. Well, thank you very much for your time, Kenny. It's really appreciated by all of us. Really appreciate you coming here, helping us kick off our first episode of our podcast. So,
thank you. Absolutely. I am Kenny Chiu, and you are listening to Politic Canadiana.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Good seeing you again.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, guys. Wow, that was an intense interview with Kenny.
It's always good to see our dear friend Mr. Chiu.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
That was, yeah. One thing that I was still really interested in, and Jordan, I'm wondering if you can get into this a little bit more. You talked about the CSIS phone call. How does CSIS call, like, you're on a, how does CSIS go and call somebody?
All right, well, hopefully CSIS isn't mad at me for saying this, but they call you. And then you don't know if it's actually them who called or not. So you have to make a few inquiries, and it's just like you would expect in a spy movie. You have to do some code words, some exchanges back and forth there, but eventually an officer will verify themselves through such a system that the next time they call, you know it's real, and you're able to give them the information they're asking for.
It's wild.
It leads to an ongoing relationship. The more info they want, the more they reach out, the more they want to be involved in collection, monitoring, and they make soft suggestions, things that you can do immediately to try and mitigate risk. But like we said at the beginning, they're not an enforcement agency, even though I'm starting to think they very much should be. I don't know how widespread that opinion is. But I think the officers in CSIS, they have been genuinely good and helpful people. They care about their jobs. They care about what they're doing. And being able to arm them with a little bit of extra privilege would go a long way in mitigating threats to our country.
Mm.
So did you get to become pen pals with the CSIS agent?
So many questions.
I did. I think that's a question for Mr. Chiu and
That's an upcoming bock from Jordan Wood.
Honestly,
Pen pals with the CSIS agent.
I like the title. I'm with it. I'm with it. I wanted to just. I'm very thankful that Mr. Chiu was able to hang out with us for this a little bit and give us so much insight. The one takeaway that is stirring in me is what the impact will be if inactivity continues to be Canada's response to what has happened. And I mean, he's given us from, pre-election how much has been done up until this point. Mm-hmm. And my fear is, we are a global nation, we have allies, and the allies, they got the CSIS report like we did. So my big fear is, after a while, if we continue to stay inactive, our allies are going to think, well, if they're not going to be doing any kind of proactive work on dealing with this issue, then where's the trust? How can we continue to do even just trade, military, intelligence sharing? They're going to, at some point, my fear is that one day they're going to be like, we do not consider you friendly anymore. We consider you a neutral because you don't take care of your business. And that could have serious ramifications for this country moving ahead. So
or
that's
worse if they consider us compromised.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's my main takeaway from this interview.
I think the thing that's really stuck with me from Kenny's time with us was he used the phrase I felt exposed. As in, he's sitting there, and when there's 338 parliamentarians, you can kind of like fade into the background a little bit sometimes. You're a guy. Whereas I think what we really heard from Kenny in these interviews, he felt very alone and isolated, and that's a really effective tactic if you're the CCP to go and make it feel like you're fighting this alone, feel like you don't have the support of government, feel like you don't have the support of anyone else, and you're looking for answers and you're looking for tools to go, holy crap, I'm about to go and lose my seat through foreign interference.
After spending over a year fighting foreign interference.
Yeah. That's... I cannot imagine what you and Kenny went through on that campaign. But that's got to just be the worst sinking feeling as more and more of this evidence piles up as you're going through and you're going, this is real. Holy, this is real.
It was indescribably awful at the time, but now 2 years-ish away from that. The information that's coming out is really vindicating. I feel good. I'm very happy to see that the story that Kenny went through, and I'll put it on him, I know I was there, but it's his story. And seeing the support still being given to him now, it's a good feeling. It gives me some hope that foreign interference isn't going to be ignored. At least not by the good guys.
Yep. Well, with that, I think we have gone quite long on this podcast, as is what happens when we get into deep interview discussions. So we're going to close it out there for today. Thank you for listening to Politic Canadiana. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts from, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We'd also like to note that all opinions expressed on this podcast are our own. So on behalf of Dalton Holloway and Jordan Wood, I've been your host, Greg Lurtz. Have an awesome week.